Packing House Restaurant, 900 East Layton Avenue. Now open 7 days a week, serving steaks, shrimp, seafood, and fresh salads. Over 1 dozen entrees, soups, and sandwiches available for drive-through or curbside pickup. 7 days a week from 3 p.m. until 8 p.m. and 11 a.m. until 9 p.m. for our cash-only Friday fish fry drive-through. Full menu available with 24 hours notice. Don't forget the appetizers and desserts, bacon-wrapped water chestnuts, crab-stuffed mushrooms, banana cream pie, tiramisu, and cheesecake, all baked from scratch. Call us at 414-483-5054 to place your drive-through or curbside order today. Visit us online at packinghousemke.com. Join Milwaukee Film virtually for the Minority Health Film Festival, presented by the Freighter and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network, taking place September 10th through 24th. Watch 50 films plus conversations about the health and well-being of families, communities, and institutions. Festival passes are on sale now at mkefilm.org/MHFF. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. So I'm doing something different this morning. You probably can tell because when I do things different, I'm learning it on the fly, and I will admit, don't know what I'm doing. So hopefully you can see this and hear this. I cannot see your comments. I'm going to have to hunt those down some kind of way. There are a couple of people watching, which is good, which means that somebody somewhere can see this. So ultimately what's going to happen is I am no longer going to be broadcasting on Facebook Live. It's going to be a YouTube broadcast. Well, you can still see it on Facebook. I'll just share the link. But I'm getting away from Facebook for a variety of reasons because it's not a platform that is intended nor designed for this. I mean, it's easy enough to do. You can go live from your phones or whatever, but I want to provide a better experience for you all and help for myself, just to be a little bit more proud of the work that we all do together. So the format is essentially going to be the same, but how you view it live is going to be different. You'll be able to go to the YouTube channel, which I'll post a link at some point, and you still will be able to chat. But instead of just having it open up in your Facebook page, you'll just go to YouTube. But essentially everything will stay the same, and then I'll have to get used to doing that all over again. A few things today. So there's a conspiracy theory. Good morning, Mia Cocroft. She said, I already subscribed. Thank you. But you know what it is? Because I created I clearly had a lot of energy last night. So I created an actual forum2.com Facebook page, which never existed before. It was just the group. And when the forum group started, that was in 2012. And the sophistication of Facebook then isn't what it is right now. And so I created this new page, which just makes it a lot easier. And so instead of me posting things to the group, it's just going to be from the page. And so that's where I'm broadcasting from, but I don't know if anybody can see me. Anyways, I'm still going to do my thing because there's information that I would still like to discuss, even if it's just me and Mia C that are enjoying this broadcast this morning. Mike Pence was here yesterday, so was Kamala Harris. And for those that thought the people in the state of Wisconsin were ignored during the 2016 campaign, that clearly is not the case. I'd imagine that Trump will be here again. Joe Biden will be here again. We're somewhere around 56 days until the election, which means the push really is now. I do still have a lot of concern about mail-in ballots, and I'm encouraging people to vote in person if you can. I know that everyone cannot actually get to a physical polling location. And for those instances, do what you have to do to make sure that you're able to cast a vote. So if mail is your only option, then mail is your only option. Keeping in mind, we've got servicemen and servicewomen that are overseas where mail is their only option as well. So the post office is equipped to handle a certain amount of mail-in ballots. Good morning, Charles Reeves. So maybe you guys can't see me. Okay. Good morning, Marcy and Benita. Okay. I'm doing things different. Does it look different on your end because I'm broadcasting from a different page? I'm just testing stuff because I'm soon to get rid of the broadcast being native to Facebook, and it's going to be all YouTube because YouTube is a video platform. Facebook is not a platform for video. Facebook is a website and a bunch of other stuff and a bunch of conspiracy theories, and we're going to talk about those too, but it's not meant for video broadcasting. Carmen Patterson. Oh, no, I'm seeing everybody's comments. Loretta Cunningham says good morning. So maybe I was doing it wrong my first 4 months, which is very possible. Anyways, I have an article here that says 67% of Biden supporters plan to vote by mail. It's too high of a number. Only 11% of Donald Trump supporters plan to vote by mail. That sounds about right. The issue with that is, and I know that I don't know what they've done in other states because this is the other issue. It's different in every state. One of the Carolinas, people are going to start voting in the presidential election, and I believe North Carolina this week because ballots are going out. And so what some states are allowed to do by state law, and this is something that has to change even before the Electoral College has to change, there needs to be a uniform federal standard for how states vote. The reason why we may not know who the next president of the United States is at the end of the evening on October 3rd. Oh boy, November 3rd. Is it November 3rd? It's November 4th. I guess I need to know the election date. But the reason why we won't know is because some states can begin to verify ballots and signatures immediately. Some states can't begin to verify mail-in ballots and signatures until 2 weeks before the election. Other states, including states that might be getting 1.5 million mail-in ballots, some states cannot verify those ballots until election night, until the polls actually close. So you have all of these different time frames in which states and municipalities can start counting ballots. It very well may take weeks, and that makes me nervous. We did a real good job of promoting mail-in voting in April because at that time, there really wasn't much choice because our polling locations simply weren't open. They will be open in the city of Milwaukee. Plus, we have 2 really large available venues to handle the influx of voters. Now, whether those locations serve as actual polling sites, like can you go to the Fiserv Forum and walk in the building and actually go to a voting booth? I believe you can. Miller Park, same thing. Can you actually go to Miller Park, go inside of the stadium itself and find places in which you can actually vote? Maybe you can. I'm going to verify all of that because even when I went to the city's website, it still didn't have the days and hours of operation of the early vote polling locations. And that makes me nervous too. It makes me think that they may not have sufficient staff, people, and volunteers to run those early voting sites. And so I had requested some time ago, and a few of you submitted your information. Imagine at the last minute, because Milwaukee is one of those cities where if Trump wins Wisconsin, they're just going to blame us. And so what I don't want is this last minute, emergency where the election commission needs more people. Poll workers are deciding it's too much risk for them to go out and work, or other people, other volunteers, people are back to work, the kids are in school, and we won't have the necessary man and woman power to function on election day or the 2 weeks prior to the election with early vote. So I would like to be able to provide a list of people who can make themselves available if we need additional bodies to help administer the election. It really is that important. Sandra B, good morning to you. Sandra B says new headphones. So these headphones, they are new, thank you. They're Bluetooth, but I could take this thing, the plug out, and then they could be all wireless, but then I get interference. Every now and again, you may hear like this crackling interference. Trust me, I'm trying to work on it. I'm trying to get this broadcast as normal as possible. And it's been an interesting ride. Anyway, so if you go to the forum2.com, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can put in your name and your email address. And if, on November 1st, the city of Milwaukee or Milwaukee County needs a number of volunteers, because they had that same request prior to the April election, because then a whole bunch of poll workers were like, no way, we're not leaving the house, we're not going out in the pandemic. But then we had a different perception, I think, of the coronavirus in early April than we do right now. Depending upon where you go, and I'm only speaking for the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, there's no pandemic. There's just people and you have to remember, because remember when, like every time you left the house, right, you had your mask on and you come in the house and right away you wash your hands, you had this routine. And I got to watch myself, because even my routine is becoming more lax because the world has just adjusted. And also, I live really close to a suburb, and the suburbs in Milwaukee County have always taken the virus less seriously than the city. There was a city of Milwaukee that closed bars and restaurants first. In fact, I think our shutdown was March 16th-ish in Milwaukee. St. Patrick's Day was the next day. There were bars that were open in West Dallas, as one example of a suburb. They were open, full bar was open. They opened up at 6 o'clock in the morning like everything was normal. So the suburbs have they've gotten better, but now they've kind of reverted back to their wild, wild west mentality when it comes to the virus. And there's a fair amount of time that I spend in the suburb just because the amenities and the services and the goods and the products that I need are available there and not necessarily in the part of the city where I live. And it looks normal. I saw my first family at the grocery store, and this was last week, no masks on any of them. Like, we're not at a point where you shouldn't be wearing a mask. So anyways, I said all that to say this. In April, we had a huge shortage of available poll workers. And so we only had 5 polling locations that were open, and that was a tremendous disaster. I don't want that to happen again. And I'm assuming the city of Milwaukee does have the necessary labor to have the vast majority of our polling locations open on election day. But if something happens, because you never know with this virus, that's why they call it novel. We might get a bunch of people that get sick leading up to the election. And at this point, anything is possible, because we've just seen everything but the locusts have come so far in 2020. So if you can make yourself available, we would love to be able to rely on you if the City of Milwaukee Election Commission needs additional people to help with the election. And it might even be something as simple as directing traffic, because there'll be potentially a lot of traffic, and also polling locations that are in schools. And I don't know how they're going to do that, because I'm assuming there's still going to be some kind of social distance requirement. But if you have kids in school, I just don't know how all that's going to work. So with that being said, Alden Higgins, good morning. See, you heard that interference? That's what I'm trying to get rid of. Anyways. So I titled this broadcast, at least I think I did, where I typed where the box says title, where I typed title. I don't even know where that is. Let me look. As you see, I'm still figuring things out here. Oh yeah, what is QAnon? All right. So some of you may have heard of this really weird, frightening, paranoid, schizophrenic, kooky conspiracy theory. And I'll admit, I made fun of it. I didn't pay much attention to it, but I'm starting to see more and more media outlets pick it up and talk about it. And I just ignored it because there's real things to worry about, not a bunch of really, really out of the mainstream paranoid people. It's such a 2020 phenomenon. I can't even describe it any other way. QAnon. And so do you guys remember the scandal with the website Wayfair? I never really heard of Wayfair before, but I heard people talking about it. You can buy stuff, and they have like TV commercials with a little jingle, but I don't really know what Wayfair is. Is it like IKEA? I don't know what it is. You can buy stuff. I don't know what you buy on Wayfair, but somebody shops on Wayfair. And there was some kind of a glitch with their online ordering system for whatever you order on Wayfair. Okay, where if, and I don't even know who thought of this, if you typed in, so let's say you're ordering a dresser, right, a piece of furniture. I think they sell furniture on Wayfair, and you have the model of the furniture and you add it to your cart or whatever you do. But then if you type in, I got to get rid of that feedback. If you type in the name of a child that was reported missing, then your dresser or your piece of furniture that was, let's say, $399, but then you type in the name of any child that had been reported missing or a child that people believe was being trafficked, and then it would add like $10,000 or $15,000 to the cost of your dresser, leading people to believe. And there are people that, those people that say, oh, do your research. So they would, quote, research the name of a missing child, okay? Type that child's name in their order for whatever piece of furniture they were buying off of Wayfair, and then the price would automatically jump up $10,000, $15,000, $12,000, leading people to believe that you can actually buy these children via this website. And I found that to be not just shocking, but just beyond ridiculous, until a friend of mine sent me a link and said, Sherwin, you got to see this. And this friend of mine, by no means is an expert in anything. But if it had filtered down to someone like that, then how big and how frightening is this phenomenon? And so yesterday, our local newspaper here, they did an article on QAnon. I also have a Wall Street Journal article on QAnon. And I want to just go through some of the things that they believe, because groups like this that are allowed to grow and fester out of our view, because I'd imagine most of us don't know any people that believe these kinds of things, because if you did know people, then you guys would probably be talking about and posting about it, etc. But if groups like this are able to spread their misinformation, in which Facebook plays a large part, one of the reasons why I want to move this broadcast off of Facebook, because at some point Facebook is going to lose all of its credibility if it hasn't already. But these are the people that we're going to need to worry about. Wayfair, Sandra says, furniture and home goods. So Sandra, are you guys familiar with the thing with Wayfair where the company said it was just a software glitch, or somebody went in and hacked it, where if you typed in the name of a missing child, the price of whatever you were purchasing, whatever your furniture was, would go up by a number that was, I guess, similar to what a child would cost on the black market. And what I found weird about it is the people that were sharing this, there were whole like websites and Facebook pages, like they would show, the furniture that someone would buy in their Wayfair cart, and they add the child's name, they screenshot all of this, and then you would see the price jump. If that was actually the case, if you could purchase missing children on a website like Wayfair, where people that barely even know the alphabet and can hardly spell their own names think that they are detectives and they solve the cases of these missing children, wouldn't the police or the FBI be involved long before some slack-jawed yokel from McGuanago? You'd think? Maybe not. But these are the people we'd have to worry about, because they believe that Donald Trump is almost like a magical, mythical unicorn who is here to protect the world from evil satanic forces that all happen to be pedophiles, for like some kind of weird connection there. And so in the event that Donald Trump loses, and at this point, I don't know if Donald Trump is going to lose, and if he does lose, I don't know at which date we will know in which he lost. These QAnon people are the problem. All right, let's see what we got here. I got a bunch of QAnon stuff. From the Journal Sentinel, this was in yesterday's paper. Some media outlets have written it off as a kooky conspiracy. The word conspiracy discredits its power. Swept up in the culture wars over immigration and race, rattled by economic upheaval and desperate for companionship in an age of social isolation, An untold number of Americans are succumbing to radicalization in the form of fringe or extremist ideologies rooted in baseless conspiracy theories. The emergence of QAnon, which has promoted and capitalized on Donald Trump's presidency, comes at a volatile moment amid a raging pandemic and an upcoming election. The movement, which holds Trump on a pedestal as a hero in a fight it portrays as being against evil liberals and the media, is rallying support for the president in his campaign against former Vice President Joe Biden. Donald Trump was asked about QAnon at a press conference maybe a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And then he said what he always says, doesn't he? Well, I don't know much about him. That's always his default. Donald Trump, 17 people just went to jail because they were protecting you and working with your campaign. Well, I've never met any of them, but then they'll show photos of Donald Trump like holding hands and shaking hands and partying with these people. Oh, I've never met so-and-so. Donald Trump's pouring that guy a glass of champagne that Trump says he never met. So Trump says, per usual, he doesn't know anything about QAnon. But he's like, well, I hear that they like me very much, and that's a good thing. Any group now in America, organized group, organized fringe or not fringe, out of the mainstream or whatever, if they put Donald Trump as a centerpiece of what they are and what they believe, I assure you, Donald Trump knows exactly who they are. The Wall Street Journal goes much deeper into describing who and what they believe. And the only reason why I'm talking about this is because it's things like this, a very 2020 kind of phenomenon that we don't pay attention to because there's other legitimate things to worry about, and I totally understand that. But we don't all of a sudden want to be blindsided because there's QAnon people running for Congress. They've even filtered into state legislatures. That is when the problem becomes a part of our politics. We already can't get anything done. And to have these fringe people, that means there's enough of them to contribute to the campaigns of or to vote for members of either state or federal legislatures, which means this is not something that can be ignored. And the real problem would be, and we can have this debate if you want to, could QAnon elect more people to legislatures than democratic socialists? From the Wall Street Journal, the conspiracy theory group known as QAnon has grown in popularity in recent months. It has spread from fringe message boards to mainstream platforms and has increasingly become a political issue. Here's what we know about QAnon, the conspiracy theory behind it and how it started. QAnon is a far right-wing, loosely organized network and community of believers who embrace a range of unsubstantiated beliefs. These views center around the idea that a cabal of Satan-worshiping pedophiles, mainly consisting of what they see as elitist Democrats, politicians, journalists, entertainment moguls, and other institutional figures, have long controlled much of the so-called deep state government, which they say seeks to undermine President Trump, mostly with aid of media and entertainment outlets. Oh, it gets better. QAnon conspiracy alleges that there is a battle between good and evil in which the Republican Mr. Trump is allied with the good. QAnon followers are awaiting two major events. One, the storm, and two, the Great Awakening. The storm is the mass arrest of people in high power positions who will face long-awaited reckoning. The Great Awakening involves a single event in which everyone will attain the epiphany that QAnon theory was accurate the whole time. This realization will allow society to enter an age of utopia. This is batshit. Who is QAnon? Followers believe that, quote, Q is a high-ranking government insider, presumably with a military or intelligence background, committed to exposing the hidden truth of what they see as an international bureaucracy scheming against Mr. Trump and his supporters. Some followers believe that Q often sends coded signals about his or her existence using the number 17, the letter Q's placement in the alphabet. Online posts surrounding QAnon conspiracy theories have often described Q as a patriot or as a saint. Don't worry, there's more. In October 2017, messages on the anonymous online messaging board 4chan attributed to Q Clearance Patriot were posted and signed by a user identified as Q, referencing the Energy Department's highest level of security clearance for nuclear weapons, or Q clearance. These cryptic messages would later be referred to as Q drops or breadcrumbs, purportedly clandestine code that often made their way into pro-Trump slogans and messages and were repeated by followers. So it goes on and on and on. It gets crazier and crazier and crazier and deeper. If this group is, I don't have the vocabulary to describe what this is, and it's a growing community online, that Donald Trump is on the side of good, and he is there to beat back the media, the elite, who all happen to be pedophiles, even though we know Donald Trump was seen gallivanting around with Jeffrey Epstein, but that's a whole nother thing. There's a danger in that. Like the civil war that we're trying to avoid, I don't think it comes from the Boogaloo Boys and the other armed militia people. I don't think it's them, because they've stood down more than their rhetoric and their camouflage outfits would lead us to believe. We've always been aware of these armed militias, and they've always talked about the day when there's going to be angry protests, when there's going to be mobs in the street, when the marginalized people rise up. Those armed militia groups, when they did their little trainings, and I can remember seeing documentaries on 2020 going back 25 years ago about these armed militia groups that are all over the country. They were preparing for the summer that we just had. So that was their whole reason for existence. I wish I could stop that feedback. I don't know how to stop that. But we saw, and yes, there was some gun violence, but you had, sometimes the people that were shot during the protest this summer were on the side of Black Lives Matters protesters. So they were doing some shooting too. But these militias who made themselves seem to be this de facto army to protect the patriots and to stand up for the American flag, they're a big bag of sugar. They really didn't do much of anything. And if anything, their most violent and vile, militia member was a 17-year-old child. But it's the QAnon people. I guess I should probably keep reading it, but it just gets more nuts. And it only got brought to my attention because someone that I know shared with me a link to wayfair.com. And they're like, oh, Sherwin, put in here, I found a list of missing children. And if you put their names in, you can find them all, but you got to pay a whole bunch of money and there's people raising money. I'm not kidding you. You know how far gone some Americans are? And the conversation about mental illness should never stop. And I know that a lot of you have been dealing with things. I've been dealing with things. I have had a friend commit suicide because of everything that is going on. But sometimes mental illness that's not addressed can be diffused amongst other people that are feeling this pressure and feeling the weight of the pandemic and losing their job and maybe getting evicted and not knowing what to do with the kids, and there's no childcare available and the kids have to go to school, but then the kids can't go to school. That can take a toll on anybody. But when those people who are feeling this pressure from all sides, stressed like they probably never felt before, can attribute it to something that is ridiculous, because now would be the time this year of any year in human history where you can attribute stuff to ridiculous things. And it's that mental illness that can get diffused amongst groups to where you find someone that believes these conspiracy theories just like you. You know what that means? That means that you might not be out of your mind after all. Everybody's saying you're crazy, but you're not crazy, because look at all of these people in this growing online community with this shared delusional disorder. This is Donald Trump's America. Karen Ann says, I'm sure Q is sitting in an office in Moscow or the White House. You're absolutely right. I never would have guessed in a million years that Americans could be so woefully manipulated. I mean, not just by Trump, but by all these other outside forces. And you know what we're being told still? Yeah, Russia's working to manipulate the election. Yeah, Russia's doing their thing. It just becomes a part of the news cycle like everything else. Now I just got an inbox message. I kind of want to read it. Couldn't put this on the live this morning, but there's a local Q follower that has been in the news lately for ridiculous comments she made at the Elmbrook School Board meeting in August. Heidi Anderson. I think I saw something about that. They edited the video to remove her anti-Islamic statements, but there's still a lot of crazy. There's also a Facebook group called Wisconsin Against Mandatory Masks that are big Q believers. You could have posted that in the conversation. It's not too incriminating. Like anything that somebody puts on the internet, if there's a video of somebody speaking ridiculous conspiracy things at a school board meeting or at a town hall meeting, oh, absolutely. Have at it. And I think that if I'm not mistaken, that lady, but there's been so many crazy, wacky school board meetings. I've always said that those local town hall meetings and like school board meetings, that's where like real democracy is. That's people right there in the neighborhood, right there in the community coming out and voicing their concerns. And that's where you see some of the craziest stuff. Some of the school board meetings earlier in the summer about, should we go back to school? Should we open the schools? Some of the most frightening commentary, because a lot of times you would never hear from any of those people, but they're real passionate about reopening schools, and they're also very passionate about masks, which became a political statement. One of the failures, and there's so many failures, of this administration is taking something that is a part of public health and you politicize it to the point where I can tell someone's political affiliation by them wearing a mask or not. And then because we have politicized wearing masks, I've seen people with political messages, Biden Harris on their mask, Black Lives Matter on their mask. That is the worst possible scenario we could ever be in. Something that is designed to stem the tide of a novel virus, a pandemic, the worst that we've seen in 100 years, has now become a political statement. And people are willing to die and get themselves, their families, their communities sick because of their love of country. Like, that makes no sense, because if you really were a patriot and you loved your community and you loved your family, which these people will tell you that they do, unequivocally, they'll say, oh my God, I love my country and my family and something, the flag, and you sons of bitches that kneel are acting in the most unpatriotic way and have fell in love and have been gaslit and hypnotized by a dictator. And you can't even, there's no words to even describe it, because you certainly can't tell them that. You can't even talk about fairness, justice, and equality. They always talk about freedom, don't they? They love freedom. They want freedom. I got freedom to not wear a mask. And to an extent, I would say you're right. Then stay home. You don't have to when you're at home, you can be naked. I mean, sometimes I come out of the shower and I don't have my towel. I gotta, right? You have freedom. But a freedom that they're forgetting is, don't we also have the freedom to not be judged by race? To live your life that's not harming or hurting anybody, to be successful, to get a job, to make money, to buy a house, to start a business, without race playing a role in every one of those steps, where your zip code can determine your altitude. Isn't that a lack of freedom? And if you are for freedom, then just admit you're only for freedom for some people, because the issue of race goes counter and contrary to the idea of freedom, does it not? And so if you have that belief that freedom is only for some, then we are still living in a slave state. If you don't understand that someone being judged on the color of their skin or their gender identity or their religion in a country where we have freedom of religion protected by the Constitution, which they all seem to know so well, but they stop reading at the Second Amendment first. They got free speech. And then I got a Second Amendment guns, but they don't know anything else after that. They probably should read something about the 25th Amendment. And that's the part that's so confusing, because you have the most patriotic people, or at least they say they're patriotic. Like somebody who wear an American flag in public. You don't have to do that. We understand. Or people that have, people do it on Memorial Day, and I get it. You fly the flags to show, your respect for those in military service that have died to give us these freedoms. But didn't they die to give me freedom too? Didn't black soldiers who may have been fighting for something different in these theaters of war, white soldiers may have been fighting for, I don't know, whatever they were fighting for, but black soldiers were like, we have something to prove here, that we can be American like everybody else and fight for not just freedom for everybody else, but freedom for us too. It's just the most perplexing part about all of this. All right, got something else here for you. No more QAnon stuff. It's frightening. But just don't pay too much attention to it, but maybe we should be aware. And when they start running for office, like whoever would have thought in a million years that you may have to have a Democratic candidate with a campaign message that's anti-QAnon, right? Because once they start getting elected to legislatures, and in Wisconsin, I promise I'm gonna get off the subject in a second. It's possible because the districts are so gerrymandered that even moderate, sensible people that may have voted for Trump, maybe they were Reagan Republicans or whatever they were, the way these districts are drawn, there's so many more conservative Republicans in some of these Wisconsin state assembly districts that Democrats would literally have to move into the district, like literally sell their homes where they live and move into this district to be able to compete with the number of Republicans that are in these districts. And so when the numbers are that skewed toward conservative voters, then you can go further and further and further to the right with your messages, because over time the stimuli need to increase. So it's not just, Donald Trump building the wall. It's not just Donald Trump, ending these trade agreements with China. It's Donald Trump being a crusader for Jesus, and all the liberals are satanic forces. As we go further on, things just get more extreme. An example would be the campaign of 2016 compared to the campaign of now. It's two different countries. Trump was like, oh, he's a businessman. We'll give it a try. The economy was good. Americans were feeling froggy. So we'll take a leap of faith. We've got a businessman. The economy is doing good. See, when you got money in your pocket, you take a lot more risks. America had money. Was everybody employed? No. Did the Obama-Biden administration create a whole bunch of jobs and get us out of a home foreclosure crisis and get the banks lending again and get our automakers here in America building cars again? Was productivity up? Yes. There were a number of Americans that were feeling real good. They said, yeah, we're feeling real good. We can take an unnecessary risk on Donald Trump. And I can't talk about, what the real prevailing sentiment was at the time. A lot of it was just hatred for Hillary. Like, we got mad at her because she didn't come visit us. And typically Wisconsinites don't want visitors. You should hear how we talk about Illinois people. When we see all those Illinois license plates in the touristy places in Wisconsin, bring all their coronavirus from Illinois. We don't like visitors, but all of a sudden we got mad at Hillary Clinton because she didn't come visit. It's weird. But doesn't it seem like it's two different countries? If you told the story of America from 2008 to 2016, you just, you had a chronological story of history, those years, 8 years, 2008 to 2016. And you talked about the data, like what happened in the news, and maybe there was a scandal here and the economy did this and job creation and, the Affordable Care. You just write about it, okay? And then you write about 2016, really January 20th, 2017 until now, and you wouldn't even think you're in the same nation. So speaking of Donald Trump not being in the same nation, one advantage he always had over his Democratic rivals was the ability to raise money. Now, in 2016, part of his strategy was, whether it was intentional or not, so there was certainly some Russian influence, and a lot of the social media influence machine was controlled by foreign governments. And that's not even a subject for debate, because we know that there was a whole impeachment and a whole investigation about that. Remember Robert Mueller? It seems like ancient history. It was like 2 years ago. But another thing that Trump did in 2016 is he just would say such outrageous things that he got a lot of media attention. If you say that you're going to build a wall and you're going to tell the American people that another country is going to pay for it, that is the kind of sensationalism that media eats up, because they know that people are going to pay attention to that and consume that. And Donald Trump had the ultimate stage. He's a grifter. He's a marketer. He's a carnival barker. And you give the carnival barker a larger audience than those who would attend the carnival. Because in isolation, a Donald Trump rally is a carnival, complete with carnies that travel from city to city. That's what it is. But because he was running for president, and the way he belittled and berated other Republicans, there was a whole bunch of Republicans that were running for that nomination. Whoever thought that Donald Trump would be the last one standing? And he said such outrageous things that he got attention. He got the equivalent of $4 billion worth of free advertising that he didn't have to pay for. They could have found the money, I'm sure, because the corporate elite still have this weird incestuous love affair with Donald Trump. But he got $4 billion worth of free. Hillary Clinton did not get $4 billion worth of free. In fact, the free media that Hillary Clinton got, right? So the advertising and what we saw of her that wasn't paid for by her campaign was emails. It was Benghazi. It was how Bill Clinton is a bad person, so then Hillary Clinton must be a bad person too. So the majority of, I wouldn't say the majority, but enough of the attention she got was on the bad stuff she did. And her 25, 30, 40 years in public service and all the mistakes she made and all the stupid stuff she said. And I'll admit, I played into it as well. I didn't like when Hillary Clinton called young Black teenagers super predators, because at the time she said it, I fit the description. So I didn't like that. But the negative attention that she got helped tank her campaign, where Donald Trump was just like this spectacle. Now he's running as an incumbent. Usually incumbents have got tremendous amount of opportunity to raise money, because there are people who have made a real comfortable living with Donald Trump being president, real comfortable living. And you would think that they would contribute to his campaign. They are not. This one comes from Axios.com. Money concerns are very real for President Trump's campaign, an unusual predicament for a sitting president, and one that worries veteran Republican operatives, with Trump so far behind in swing states as races begin to climax. Why it matters. The campaign's view is that Trump will get his message out, and he depends less on paid media than normal politicians, but the number of states Trump has to worry about has actually grown. And Joe Biden's massive August fundraising haul has given his campaign a lift as early voting begins. Joe Biden raised $365 million, or like 364.9 or something, in the month of August. The most money ever raised by a candidate, pretty sure. Barack Obama, 2012, either 347 million or 847 million or $874 million was raised by Barack Obama, right? Joe Biden raised half of that in a single month. Trump is no longer financially competitive as the race for president is growing, the election date is growing near. The light of television spending and advertising blackouts in some key states has mystified allies. So Trump does not have enough money to run television commercials. Wisconsin is clearly not one of those states, because I see Trump commercials every 20 minutes. President Trump's reelection strategy reflects the unique 2020 campaign calendar. And quote, "We are confident that his success in rebuilding our economy will prove the pivotal contrast this fall." I don't know why they keep talking about the economy. The stock market is not the economy. Trump is expected, quote, "to increase television spending next week, but several Republicans say that Bill Sepien, Mr. Trump's campaign manager since July, was taking a cautious approach after the former leadership spent huge sums on television and digital ads earlier this year with no discernible effect. I saw a poll of where Joe Biden was just at, and the polls are all over the place, but for the most part, Joe Biden is doing better at this point than Hillary Clinton was doing in 2016, but I don't even know if you can count that. So there was a poll of where Joe Biden was just after the Democratic convention in Wisconsin. Okay. He was at plus 6% more people that were polled said they favored Joe Biden. Okay. Fast forward. Who knows what scandals took place in the meantime. But then you have the Republican convention where, of course, the last convention is expected to get the biggest bump. And they did another poll of battleground state Wisconsin voters. And what did they find out? That Donald Trump had not moved at all in the poll. So even after the convention and whatever ad spending they were doing here, it hasn't worked. Now, again, that's not a predictor. The real big wild card in this election is how the mail-in ballots, let me say that again, how are the mail-in ballots going to be counted? Because you have some states that can't even open those mail-in ballots until election day. Some states can start verifying signatures and ballots 2 weeks before the election. There are some states, one of the Carolina, I think it's North Carolina, is going to start sending ballots out now. And as soon as those ballots come back in, they can start to verify the validity of those ballots. And because you've got so many different ways of administering elections all over the country, there's no way that we're going to know on election night. And I don't know how we're going to sleep, because the effort that we're going to see here, the people that are registering voters and the different events, and it's just going to be pandemonium plus chaos plus a whole bunch of fear plus a whole bunch of coronavirus pandemics. And to not know, and I don't want to get, put the cart too much ahead of the horse, but I'm trying to put myself in the frame of mind. Can I go to bed on November 3rd and not know who the president of the United States is going to be in November or in January? And I am desperately trying to prevent that because I like to get sleep. It's really important. And it might be an inaccurate way to gauge things. So I'm always looking at ways in which we can predict the future. But all my crystal balls, not that I have crystal balls, they've been shockingly inaccurate. Like I thought Donald Trump was like going to get like really impeached. Like I thought he really was going to resign, or it was going to be too much pressure for him. He dusted that off like when a rapper has one bad album and records another one. I've been wrong. And so the other thing I'm concerned about is the census. And I don't shut up about it, and rightfully so. We're less than 60% compliance in the city of Milwaukee, and we have the most to gain by filling out the census. But then when I looked at the number, 59.7%, as of, I don't think it was accurate to the day. But I don't think that voter turnout is going to exceed people's census participation, right? So the census, which is, it's not hard to do. Like it's more difficult to vote. It's more tedious. It's more cumbersome. Even if you're voting by mail, because it's not just you get your ballot, it's 4 pages of instructions. You got to get the damn thing signed. The envelope has to get signed. Then you have the issues with the post office. It is more tedious to vote. If you go and vote in person, you got to put a mask on. You got to stay in 6 feet apart. And when I went to go vote when did I vote last? In August. I walked into the polling location and everything is behind these plexiglass shields. And then my polling, the table in which I have my poll book that I had to sign, that was behind a plexiglass shield, and she had to slide the poll book through the little plexiglass shield, and she was wearing a face shield, wearing a face mask, and I'm wearing a mask with masks everywhere, hand sanitizer squirting all over the damn place. It was a lot. And I couldn't hear her because she's wearing a face mask. You can't hear people talk when they wear masks, which is good because we don't want to hear some people talk. So she's wearing a mask. Then she's wearing a shield. Then she's behind a plexiglass, a face shield she was wearing. But then she was behind a plexiglass shield, and I'm wearing a mask, and I'm just squirting hand sanitizer all over the place. That's a lot. But the census is easy because you can do it from your house. You can do it from your phone. There are people I think that have started knocking on doors. Not in my neighborhood. I haven't seen. Well, I've filled my census out already. Mine came, I don't know how many months ago, and it's got, you go to the website, and in the envelope there's a little code. You enter in a little code, and most of my information was already filled out. I was like, yep, that's right, that's accurate. Send, done. But if a process that is easier than voting is only yielding 59.7%, I think was Milwaukee's total, then I don't expect our voter turnout to be much higher than that. But again, 66% voter turnout, which is the highest voter turnout I think we've ever seen for African Americans. This is nationwide in 2012. But it was interesting because white Americans voted at 64%. So in that presidential election of 2012, when Republicans were going to underestimate, or they thought they could underestimate the support for Barack Obama running for a second term, not only were they wrong, it was the highest turnout participation for African Americans ever, and that's 66%. So if census participation as of right now is under 60%, then I wouldn't expect voter turnout, because there's still going to be those people, right? I don't want to vote for either. And Joe Biden is something, something, and Donald Trump is something, something, and whatever. QAnon, whatever it is. Bernie Sanders. Somebody's going to write in Elizabeth Warren. The question is, Milwaukee folk, can we win the state of Wisconsin with 60% voter turnout in Milwaukee? Because we're not going to get 100%. You never get 100% of anything. And if we do get 100%, the post office is going to screw that up. Can we win with realistic expectations? And that's where I'm at right now. Judy Brown, the media attention that Donald Trump received by the media contributed to why he was elected in 2016, in my humble opinion. And I agree. But there was a rebellion happening. There's a rebellion going on now, but for the right reasons, I think. But I don't know why it has to be a rebellion or considered dangerous or violent when people are saying Black Lives Matter. But people were pushing back on the status quo of the Clintons. And some of it was just misogyny. I believe it was. Because, and I don't want to speak in general terms, but I even heard it with Barack Obama. There were some Black people that when they first met Obama, first had their, were first made aware of him, they weren't going to vote for him because, he can't win. We have such a low expectation for marginalized people that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We tell Black people that they're not going to be successful because they live in Milwaukee. You're not going to amount to anything, and that's horrible. But we do it. But there were Black people that said, no, I'm not going to vote for a Black guy because even if he does win, they're going to kill him. I heard that a lot from elders that have lived through, I can't tell you how many murders and assassinations of activists and political figures and the decimation of the Black Panthers because it was infiltrated by the FBI. That all made sense to me, but it didn't stop me from voting for Barack Obama. But you guys heard this too. There were women that said, nope. No, not going to vote for a woman. And I don't want to just take whatever it was that I heard or whatever information people shared with me and apply that to the whole. But Donald Trump won the demographic of white women. White women could have said collectively, we can have one of our own in the White House, but also know that women are not a monolith, neither are African Americans, because you can have a Black Republican and Black folks are going to reject them. We're not going to say, I'm going to vote for them because they're Black. But I thought that, because white women have always gotten the short end of the stick, figuratively and literally. Like they've been marginalized too. Like they're in this white supremacist society and they help the white supremacist society maintain itself. White women started the suffrage movement because they were angry that Black men got the right to vote first. And I would argue that with almost 80% of the public school teachers in this country being white women, even in majority minority districts, and you have a school to prison pipeline, you think that's a coincidence? That the structure of those white public school teachers have political organization and teachers unions whose makeup is majority white women, and look how I'm not going to get into all that, but doesn't that make sense? But white women could have said, you know what? And Hillary Clinton was speaking to the issues of women and speaking to the issues of white women, because when she did feature Black women on the campaign trail, it was the Black women whose husbands or sons or family members had been murdered. Black women had the role and the perception of victims in Hillary Clinton's campaign. When Hillary Clinton was talking about putting 18 million cracks in the glass ceiling, that was a glass ceiling for the women who were closest to it, and those were white women. And it just, she didn't get it. She lost. And so it makes our politics incredibly hard to predict. Now, I also think that, could be wrong, been wrong before, the support for Donald Trump is stronger than we believe. There's a level of embarrassment, I think, that exists in people admitting that they're going to support him. There is a level of embarrassment. And so these polls could be reflective of that, but most likely they are not. Let me get this bit of this article in about the census, because I'm still going to keep harping on you guys to fill out the census, because at this rate, we're going to lose an awful lot of resources, and we might even lose population. The city of Milwaukee used to have 17 aldermanic districts, but our population, in fact, until like the year 2000, Milwaukee was on the list of the top 20 largest cities in America. But then shortly after the year 2000 census, we have not been on that list anymore. In fact, we lost 2 aldermanic seats in the city. We only have 15 aldermanic seats. And that is because of apportionment. If you lose population, and some of that was people going to, retiring and going to other states, or just moving out of the city itself. But if we're not counted, we're going to have less representation. And what the Trump administration will do in their second term, if they get one, is take advantage of the fact that they won't have to dole out federal resources to blue cities, to sanctuary cities, and to cities that have larger minority populations. And that one is going to fall on us. With counting efforts set to end a month early, community organizers and others worry the census will undercount rural residents and minorities, including Milwaukee's north and south sides. The U.S. Census Bureau had planned to end the counting efforts by the end of October, but last month that deadline was moved to September 30th once it became apparent Congress would not extend the census's end of the year deadline for turning over data used to determine states' congressional seats. As a result, census workers are under increased pressure to ensure a full count, one that doesn't leave out renters, rural residents, racial minorities, and other hard to count communities. Wisconsin actually lost. Didn't we lose 2 congressional seats? How many electoral college votes? We're 10. Didn't we? I think we used to be 12. So fill out your census, because if I have to, I'll come to your house and knock on your door. Thanks, guys. So I tried something new with this broadcast, and an unmitigated disaster, but don't worry, we're still working on it. Starting next week, we're going to be broadcasting exclusively on YouTube. The link will be shared in the various Facebook groups, but YouTube is where we're going to find our new broadcast home. It's time to get to the big time, y'all. Big time as I can get broadcasting from my house. You guys have yourselves a wonderful day. And if you're going to be out in public, please wear a mask. Be a patriot. Talk to you guys soon. Join Milwaukee Film virtually for the Minority Health Film Festival, presented by the Froedtert and the Medical College of Wisconsin Health Network, taking place September 10th through 24th. Watch 50 films plus conversations about the health and well-being of families, communities, and institutions. Festival passes are on sale now at mkefilm.org/MHFF.